Liquid Trucking, what's good out there? Welcome in to the Liquid Trucking Podcast, episode 26, and I'm really looking forward to this one, but let's not kid ourselves. I get excited about all of them. I hope you guys do too. Please don't forget to like the podcast, subscribe to it, comment, give us a rating and a review on whatever platform you listen to. It helps us immensely. I know I say it a lot, but it's because I'm really pushing for that type of stuff. You guys have done such a great job with the content of this podcast. Everybody from top to bottom, all the way up to the president, Roger Schmidt, and everybody that works in the company beneath him that has helped out on this podcast has done a phenomenal job. No notes, no complaints. Keep doing what you're doing. The only thing I would add is leave a comment, like, subscribe, that type of stuff. I would love to hear any feedback that you have. In fact, today's episode actually comes from feedback. I was talking to Liquid driver Mike Stanfield, and he goes, "Hey, you ever thought about doing an episode on driver backstories? I'm interested to know where these guys came from. I know some of them, don't know all of them. I'd like to hear some of the backstories." And bam, we've got an episode for you. I am going to be joined by Mike Stanfield coming up here in just a little bit. He's going to lead it off. After that, we're going to talk to Liquid driver Robert Sanchez. After that, we will get on with Liquid driver Rob Schroeder and Jason Eisenman. Rob has been with Liquid since it was like 4 trucks in a field, okay? So Rob has some great stuff to talk about and a great story to tell. We'll bring you that, and then we will talk to Liquid driver Damon Maravilla, who will join us for the second time here on the podcast. So that's what I'm talking about. You know, I got a lot of drivers working for Liquid. You guys text me, you call me, we chat, all the time. Whenever they've got something on their mind, they're sending me pictures of great food that they cook. Alex Shevchuk, he's always sending me recipes. We've got, Mike, obviously I had this conversation with him that led to this episode. Matt McKellar's out there. He's showing me pictures of some of the great places he's hiking around. Look, that's only the very beginning. That's scratching the surface, okay? I've had a lot of really cool drivers, a lot of really cool conversations on this podcast, and I want to keep that momentum moving. We're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels, son, and I want to keep that thing moving right down the griddle. So if you've got any ideas, if you've got just an itch and you want to come on the podcast and do a segment with me, I would love to hear from you. You can find me either by, if you already have my phone number, use it. It's good. Otherwise, head on over to liquidtrucking.com. Click the podcast link right at the top of the page. It's a big banner with my face on it. You can't miss it. Or you can always send us an email, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. It's that simple. And look, if you go through those steps, you get in touch with me, you could end up on the next episode where we're talking about driver backstories or driver cars that you drive around personally, or maybe we're going to tell some horror stories, best of the best, worst of the worst. Listen, we've got time and we've got the space for you. So if you want to be on this show, give me a call, get in my email inbox, talk to Jason at the front office or your dispatcher. They'll put you in touch with me and we'll get it moving. But without further ado, speaking of get it moving, that's enough homework for me today. I'm ready to kick this episode off because I can't wait to hear some of these awesome driver backstories from the drivers that help comprise the roster at Liquid Trucking. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
I wanted to kick this episode off with our very first driver that's here to tell his backstory, and it's a special case with this driver because he's actually the one that gave me the idea to do this episode. So please welcome Liquid driver Mike Stanfield back to the show. Mike, thanks for being here, and thanks for such a great idea.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure being on. Not a problem. Anything I can do to help, with the podcast or, with Liquid in general, man. I love this company, and I want to do what I can to earn my keep here,
Well, we really appreciate it. I can't speak for the guys at the office, but I'm sure they appreciate it as well. But having, you're not the only driver for Liquid that's like that with me. I'd say there's probably 6 or 8 different drivers out there that anytime I have a question or I just want to chat or anything like that, There's such a big handful of you guys that are in touch with me, and it's awesome because it keeps me in touch with what's going on out there on the road for the most part. And when you guys have ideas like this, I mean, for those of you listening, Mike knows. Mike and I text each other all the time. Send me a text, man. I'm always around my phone. My whole life revolves around this thing, and I don't care what time it comes in. It ain't going to wake me up. So, take a page out of Mike's book and start sending me your ideas because this is going to be a really cool episode. And, Mike, what made you think of the idea? Because you texted me and you said, hey, have you ever thought about doing an idea about drivers telling their stories and like their backstories and how they got into it? Did you want to tell yours? Obviously, you're going to do that, but are there other drivers? You've just heard so many cool stories that you wanted to hear some more. Where did the idea come from?
Well, it's always interesting to see where people have come from. The challenges that they faced in life and how they've been prosperous by becoming a truck driver, because it's a very demanding career. And, you get into the right company and it pays very well and it can change people's lives. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting to see, how they got to that point where they're like, all right, enough is enough. I got to do something and change something to get, my life on track, so I just find it interesting,
Sure. Well, I do too, and I'm really excited to hear your story. So I'm going to get the hell out of the way and just let you walk me through it.
Sure. So I grew up in Kansas City, and I'm going to tell the short version because it can get quite long. But I grew up in Kansas City. It was my mom remarried, and I moved in with my stepdad and my mom. I was one of those kids that didn't like to listen to his parents. So I did a lot of running around on the streets, got into some bad crowds, ended up going to prison my first time when I was 17, 18, somewhere around there. In and out of prison for 10 years altogether. And my last time I was down, I got out in 2011, I was like, man, I got to do something. I got to change something, because what I'm doing is not working. And so I moved down to Springfield to an uncle, quotation marks, because I didn't have any family down in Springfield. So I found somebody who I was locked up with their dad let me parole to their house and stay with them for a little bit in Springfield, Missouri. So that's where it's all starting. So now I'm out of prison, don't know anybody, just the clothes on my back and the bus ticket to get down there and the little bit of, maybe $2 or $3 left over from that they gave me when I left. Starting from scratch, and being a felon and just getting out of prison, it's super hard finding a job. Mm-hmm. I was walking the streets. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a license. So I was walking the streets, looking for jobs, applying where I can. Finally, was able to get a job at Sonic. That's actually where I met my wife.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. She was a manager. We weren't actually supposed to date, but she was involved with somebody at the time who she had a kid with, or 2 kids with, actually. That's the whole different story, but they had problems, decided to split up, and so got along really well from the get-go. She ended up becoming my best friend because I didn't know anybody, and she always picked me up from where I was living and would bring me to work, and we would work open. We'd open together. And after a while, we decided, we wanted to start dating, even though we weren't allowed to per the company because she was a manager and I was just a lowly fry cook. But eventually, we both ended up quitting. She went off to do other jobs she didn't end up liking, and finally started at a job at Laser Equipment with her mom, selling printers and doing printer repairs and stuff like that.
That sounds better than managing a Sonic. I got to be honest with you. I've worked in food service before, and I wonder if I echo your sentiment when I say no, thank you. I would rather do anything else.
So for me, I didn't have a very good skill set, right? I don't have the know-how to do a lot of things because I was always out running the streets, using drugs, selling drugs, and that's what I knew. So I knew how to cook. I was in and out of restaurants and fast food restaurants while I was on the streets as a part-time job. So I knew how to do that. So there for a while, I was just back and forth from fast food restaurants to call centers, back to fast food restaurants, and then back to another call center. And then I got a job offer from Enterprise Alamo and National, which was booking car rentals, but I would work from home. And, they pay off commission just by booking car rentals. I was like, dude, that sounds awesome. So I was doing that for a while, and I was like, all right, this sucks, dude. Like, I love my family. I love being at home, but being home 24/7 is not ideal. Like, I got really tired of it really fast, and I just wasn't making enough money. We had just bought a house, and I needed to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my father-in-law, he was a truck driver, and so that kind of gave me the idea. I love driving. I always have. And I was like, well, what if I talked to my wife. I was like, what if I do what your dad's doing? Your truck driver. She's like, will you be out for a long period of time? I was like, yeah, for a little while, So we talked it over, and we decided that, yeah, we'll go ahead and try it. So I finally got into a school in Springfield, Midwest Technical Institute.
Oh, yeah.
Is the name of it. There's one in Springfield, Missouri, and there's actually one in Springfield, Illinois. But they have a CDL program there. I did some night schooling there while I worked during the day for EAN, Enterprise Alamo National. And then they were like, well, we can't do night school anymore. So I had to move 2 days and quit my job at Enterprise Alamo National because I just had the feeling that what I was about to do was going to be more important for my family.
That's a tough decision to make, too, when you have a job that's paying you. I mean, regardless of if it's enough, to quit that job to jump into education for another job that isn't necessarily guaranteed at that point, that's got to be a pretty hard decision to make, Mike.
That was a hard decision, a very, very hard decision, one that I had to sit down and have lengthy conversations with to my wife about.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have to end up borrowing money from my dad and his wife, which I ended up paying them back for it, but it kind of helped us get through the 4 weeks of training that I had to be able to get my CDL.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that from being in school, truck driving school, once I got in these trucks and I started moving around in them, I knew that this was what I was supposed to be doing. Like, I'm trying to think of the word. I got the hang of everything so fast that I got really good at, offsets, parallels, 90-degree docks, 45. So, like, all that, I got really good at everything. And so when it was time for me to take my test, I passed it first time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was it was awesome. I only missed like 2 points. And that was because one of them I turned too wide or whatever. The lady said, like, okay, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't hit anything, but whatever. And then it was a 90-degree alley dock was my skill, and I missed a couple points on that because I pulled up one too many times. But yeah, other than that, I mean,
still,
I did a really good job.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good go at it, considering some of the horror stories I've heard people go through on their first run at that test. So hats off to you there, man. Yeah,
there was only like 1, 2, I think there was 3 of us that passed the test that day out of 7 of us.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. You know what I mean? It really isn't. And you don't know what you're going to get as far as the skill set. They kind of just tell you when it's time, whether you're going to do an offset or, well, you always do an offset, whether you do a stupid roads. These freaking I-80, I'm on the turnpike, and you'd figure that these roads would be pristine because of the turnpike. Hell no. These are bumpy as hell roads. Anyway.
Your money's going elsewhere, Mike. But, we don't know where at this point, but elsewhere is what we know.
I know where it's going, but we're not going to get into politics. Anyways. Yeah, so you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to either get a parallel or you're going to get a 90-degree alley dock. And everybody got the 90 that day. Nobody got the parallel parking, which I was way better at parallel parking than I was at the 90. But anyways, so yeah, and then I started with this company PTL, and I'm not going to say too much about them because I don't like putting down other companies. But let's just say I didn't make it all the way through their training program. I moved on to RBX, which was a great company to start out with, especially if you're a new driver. They really give you some good training. You know, they stay in the Midwest and Southeast regions. You know, they don't go out west. They don't go upper east or anything like that. So it was really good for me to start out with them. I worked for them for like a year and a half. I was on the road for like 6 months, and then my wife got pregnant. And when she had our son, I talked to them, and I said, hey, I'd really like something local if you have it, so I can be make sure that I'm there for my wife while still being able to work. And so they set me up with this yard driving position at the French's plant in Springfield, Missouri, basically hauling back and forth empty and loaded trailers, 12-hour days, 6 days a week, no breaks. Worst freaking experience of my entire trucking career. I will never, ever do anything like that again.
Boy, and when you looked in the mirror after the first week of that schedule, were you like, why in the hell did I ever ask for this?
Well, the first week was okay, but then after that, I realized how tired I was because when I was home, I worked overnights too. So I would work from like 3 o'clock in the evening to 3 o'clock in the morning. So when I'd come home, I would take a shower, go to bed, and then by the time I woke up, it was almost time for me to leave again. So I was hardly able to see my wife and kids.
Wow.
And I was just so tired all the time. It just wasn't worth it. I mean, the only way I was making money is working all the overtime.
Mm-hmm.
If I was just working regular 40-hour weeks, my checks would be like fast food restaurant checks.
Sure.
I finally moved on from that, went over to Well Companies, which was another really good company that actually, REX is where I've met Damon. He was my trainer, believe it or not. And then he followed me over to Well. I told him, hey, come over to this company. It's really good. It was hauling reefer trailers. So frozen foods, cheese, milk, you know, all that good stuff.
All the good stuff.
Yeah, all the good stuff that y'all fatties like. I'm just joking.
Hey, man.
I'm a fat. I have no room to talk, dude.
I got a soft spot for cheese and ice cream, my friend, and I don't have any bones to pick about it.
Yeah, I know. Me too, dude. I'm lactose intolerant, too.
Oh, the curse. I'm sorry to hear that.
It doesn't matter to me, dude. I'll still shove down some ice cream in my fat cop.
So you're working for the reefer company now. You like that a little bit better. Damon comes along with you.
Yeah. So we're doing good, man. And I had a pretty good setup, man. I was home every weekend there for a while, and it was the same runs. So it was pretty easy. The paychecks were pretty decent. But then COVID hit, you know, and stuff, you know, started happening. Like money wasn't coming in like it should. For some reason, my stuff started slowing down really bad. So I had to start staying out 2 weeks at a time to be able to actually afford my 4 kids and wife and all of our bills.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for a while, man. And then finally I was like, man, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of sitting in docks for 8 to 10 hours a day, you know, waiting to get loaded and unloaded. And not making any money because they don't rate these regular companies that haul traditional freight, like frozen foods and drive-ins and stuff like that. If you're sitting in a dock for 8 to 10 hours, most of the time they're not paying you what you deserve in downtime. They're not paying you that for that entire time.
Right. They have a set 3 hours or something that they'll pay you, and then when that runs out, it runs out.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. If you're sitting in docks for 8 to 10 hours, you're not making nowhere near the money that you should be making.
Right.
So finally I got tired of it. And I talked to my wife. I was like, it's time to start looking for something else. Came across some Facebook ads for liquid trucking. I mean, when you see ads on Facebook, man, you just don't know anymore. Like back in the day, you'd see ads on Facebook. You'd be like, oh, yeah, it's legit,
Yep.
But now there's so many scamming companies out there, you just don't know.
Yep. And a lot of bait and switch too with those sign-on bonuses and things like that. I hear all sorts of horror stories about those advertisements. People click them, they get all the way through training, they're driving, and that money never shows up. It's hard. Yeah. You're right. You really have to pay close attention these days.
Yep. And, we've ran across a couple of companies like that. Me and my wife have in my 7 years of trucking. But I was looking through everything that, they were promising. I was like, dude, that seems too good to be true, man. And so I told my wife about it. She's like, I don't know, man. That doesn't seem right. You know what I mean? Like, that much money in a year, and they do this and they do that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So I just kind of put it on the back burner for a little while and kept, running reefers for a little bit. And then I got that one paycheck that changed everything. That one paycheck where I had been busting my ass for 2 weeks. And on that second week, that paycheck was like $500. I'm like, oh, hell no. Nope, done. So I took a shot. Me and my wife took a shot, called up Liquid Trucking, spoke to Nick when he was in recruiting back then. I liked everything I heard. I talked to a couple other different companies. Liquid was by far the one that, we wanted to pursue. First of all, it was a totally different type of freight, which was I was really excited about because I was so sick and tired of hauling reefers, and I wanted to do something new. I wanted to upgrade my license. I always said whenever I became a truck driver, I wasn't just gonna be the average Joe that sticks with one thing. I wanted to learn how to do this, learn how to do that, learn how to do this. But yeah, man, ever since my first day walking on into the terminal, I've freaking loved it ever since. Hauling freight like this is so interesting, and everything is so different. Every trailer's so different. Every load's so different. Every place we go to is so different, and it changes up all the time, and it's what makes it so much fun. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, I don't know. I just can't say enough good things about this company. If you are listening to this podcast and you're not part of Liquid Trucking and you're looking for a career switch, definitely get a hold of recruiting. You will not regret it. I promise you that. Yeah, it's hard starting out, but it's definitely worth it. Like when they say this company is like a big family, they ain't joking. I mean, I walk into the terminal, everybody's like, hey, Mike. Everybody knows my name. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. You don't get that with some of these other companies,
You really don't, Mike, and I can testify to that as well, and just say that what a fantastic group of people to work for and to work with as well. I mean, if you've got those guys at your job that are like, man, every day I come in and this guy's running his mouth, I don't see that at Liquid. I see people getting along, people like coming to work. You listen to our 500-year flood episode, and you've got a guy like Bo Whipple whose house is underwater, and he's at Liquid saving the company next to everybody else because he knows that not only the company is so important to him, but hey, this is a community. They're going to help me out if I help them out. It's a give and take. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head with it. If you're out there looking right now, you ought to take a look, and a good long one, at Liquid Trucking, because I talk to a lot of drivers and they're all happy. And I can't say that about every other company that I work with.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Of course, you're going to come across some drivers that are like, oh, I'm freaking quit. I can't believe this shit, and you're like, dude, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Yeah. You must have something, a hair up your ass or something like that. You just must not be a very happy person, because, I mean, I get along great with everybody. I don't have any problems at this company whatsoever. But yeah, that 500-year flood episode really opened my eyes more to what this company has been through, and how they came out ahead from that, how the community just came together and supported each other and lifted each other up. It was an amazing podcast. That's probably one of my favorite ones so far. So.
Oh, that's cool, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And it was a phenomenal podcast to get to be a part of and just hear the story. And you're right, man. How many companies can weather a historic flood like that and come out smelling like a rose on the other side? It takes a village, as we talked about in that podcast, and you're in the right one, man. Liquid is a great place, and I can't say enough nice things either. And I can't say enough good things about your story as well, Mike. You know, as I look at the whole story that you just told there in kind of three different chunks, I heard you tell three different love stories. I had you tell the one where you met your wife and fell in love and built a life. I heard you tell the story about falling in love with the truck the first time that you got in it. And now I hear you tell a story about falling in love with the company that you're working for right now in Liquid Trucking. And to come from where you came from, having a little bit of a rough road starting out there, man, and end up where you are today, is just great. Hats off to you for deciding to make a change in your life and look at where you are. And this is something that everybody can do if things aren't going well. And we're going to tell more stories as this podcast goes on today that confirm if things aren't going well, you can always make a positive change. And it sounds like you've done just that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, change doesn't come easy. You're going to have to put in work. Like right now, I put myself on a diet. I'm on a strict no sugar diet, and I'm doing Weight Watchers because I told you before, Marcus, I'm going to lose weight and I need to, and I'm really going to do it this time. And I have my head into it. I know it's not going to be easy, but yeah, change is possible. It's hard work, but if you put your mind to it, you can do it and you can make your life better.
Well said, man. Well said. And good luck on the diet, dude. Strict no sugar. I don't know if you want to be around me for the first week or so because I'd probably be a handful, but I'm pulling for you, dude.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I just want to say one last thing to all the office workers. Really appreciate you guys working as hard as you do. I just listened to the great podcast. It really opened up my eyes to what you guys have to go through each and every day trying to find us flows to keep us moving. So really appreciate you guys. I'm probably not going to retire with this company, but I'm not. This is my last company before I go local, which is going to be a long time from now. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate you, Marcus, and everything that you do to keep us entertained out here while on the road.
Hey, man, I feel privileged to get to do it, Mike, and I feel privileged to get to be associated with people like yourself and all the other great Liquid drivers and staff members that share their time with us on this show. I want to say a huge thanks to you for coming on and telling your story, and just tell you, man, keep the shiny side up, be safe out there, and we'll talk again soon. I know we will.
Most definitely. I appreciate you, Marcus.
Joining me next here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, I've got Liquid driver Robert Sanchez joining us for his first appearance on the podcast. Robert, we're very happy to have you here. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
Of course. Now, since this is your first time on the podcast, I want to introduce you a little bit. Let's start off right at the top. How long have you been driving for Liquid?
I have been driving for Liquid since Halloween 2022, so I think we're a year and a half, into this great relationship. So yeah, year and a half years, or 1.5 years, sorry.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, you just called it a great relationship, so I got to assume that you're liking it thus far.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I think what everything from the jump, everything from the beginning, I was in a process of trying to, further my career as a driver, and I was doing my first job. Trucking was a flatbed, but I wanted to, continue to learn and grow. So I wanted to get into tanker, and from the jump, Nick was just honest and welcoming, and had a good positive things to say about him working with Liquid and other drivers in the past. So yeah.
Very cool. Now, where did you start your career at? And you don't have to mention the company, but you said you were driving flatbeds. How long did you drive flatbed before you got hooked up with Liquid?
I drove flatbed for 2 years. in Denver, Colorado. I would drive up the mountains on I-70 for about maybe a 2.5, 3 hour drive to go to a facility that made drywall, and then would bring that drywall back to the Lowe's and Home Depot in the metro area. So yeah, it was a good experience. Even I would say I'm a pretty good seasoned driver when the snow obviously comes on, and you have to train up for that.
Yeah. What a good way to train yourself, by just driving straight up a mountain every day.
Yeah,
you know? That's,
right.
You want to get tempered in the fire, man. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So what types of things do you like more about tanking over flatbed?
Well, I think, for me, it was just kind of like, it's considered, a local or regional. What I love about this, is it's kind of like, you don't know, I guess every load presents its own challenge, because you don't know where you're going until you know, as far as like location. There might be some places where I've gone before that I know, but even then, you got traffic, weather, and then, if you don't know where you're going, you kind of do your due diligence and, find the safe and right way, to get to the customer. And then, the handling of the product, the safety gear, you just don't know. You want to, make sure that you're prepared and that you're safe, and not for all parties involved.
Sure.
And that's a challenge, So, yeah.
But it kind of sounds like you like the challenge, like you're up for it. You would rather have a day of work that is going to test you a little bit than a day of work that's going to put you to sleep.
Exactly. It keeps me, keeps the mind, keeps my mind sharp and just on my toes. Cause you never want to, get, complacent, cause that's when you get complacent, that's where, the errors happen.
Yep.
And you make a mistake, and it's just like, well, I've go to a customer and say, well, I pulled soybean oil for every day, you just get complacent, and you have a big spill, unfortunately.
Yep.
And then that looks bad on you, that looks bad on Liquid, everybody, and then it's just not a good feeling. You want to. My personal take is, these guys, and I mean guys, Liquid, and they did a favor for me and hiring me, and it has bettered my life, and I want to just practice what they preach, do what they say, ask of the drivers, be safe, be on time, be professional. And it's a good relationship.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
No, it sounds like it. And they say iron sharpens iron, right? You're talking about staying sharp. You're never going to be able to stay sharp if the job doesn't have those challenges and that tedium, those details that you have to pay attention to. And I would say hauling Liquid is by far the most tedious. I mean, I've never driven myself, but I talk to a lot of drivers, and based on what you Liquid drivers tell me, yeah, you got to be on your toes, man. There's no staying out late and getting up early and feeling like garbage and having a good day. You got to get your rest, and you have to make sure you're at 100% so that you can keep yourself safe, keep the product safe, and keep all those people around you safe.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're absolutely right. And they're like, when I do the hazmat loads, like a caustic or something, and, they got to suit up and wear protective gear, I just think having this conversation is like, just having flashbacks of those type of loads that I haul, and I take my time, I tell the customer, hey, this is some serious stuff. Let's just be safe. Let's get all the safety measures, what's needed, what's required, what could go wrong, what's the protocol for that, and our buckets, making sure, we're sealed on our fittings and everything, just you take it a little bit slower there, because that's the more dangerous stuff. And obviously you want to transport it in a safely manner, but, you also want to go and do your next load, for that, and not have any accidents per se.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And it's a big deal too. I mean, you never see a dry van get unloaded properly and have the entire trailer just crunch into like a smashed pop can. That can happen with the trailers you guys are hauling if you're not paying attention, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It can. And that was one of the many things, that was on my onboarding process and orientation. Hey, make sure you vet the top of the trailer so you don't have a trash can and whatnot. And when I dropped an empty trailer in the beginning, I saw a couple of those pop can trailers, and I was just like, whoa, like something must have happened, from a different job. You just see the physical ramifications of, not being sharp and remembering your steps, and what you need to do before, you start to unload the product. So yes.
For sure. Well, that's all great. I feel like we know you a little bit better now, Robert, and I want to ask you to kind of tell me your story. It sounds like you're still, compared to some of the guys that we talked to on this show, 4 years in, give or take, you're still kind of relatively new. How did you start out in trucking? What was going on in your life? Did you make a big career change, or did you come right out fresh out of school and decide you were going to jump into trucking? What did that entail for you?
No, so I turned 36 last month. I've been doing this since I was 32. The adulthood part of my life, after high school, I served in the military. I was in the Air Force for 4 years, and then I got out, and for close to 8 to 10 years, I kind of really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was kind of really set on construction, trying to learn a trade. But then whenever I got serious about it, COVID hit, and the lockdowns and the quarantine and stuff. So I got laid off. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know, I was at the time, I was just kind of like, well, what's next? Because I've always worked. I've always had a job. I didn't, I never really had a gap of, any type of employment. Mm-hmm. And, I had saved some money. Throughout my life, my parents kind of taught me of, just saving some money when you get paid for a rainy day. Didn't know exactly what a rainy day was, but got some money saved up, quarantine and lockdown and that stuff happens. And, I watch the local news, and they talk about the supply chain issue. Oh, with all the toilet paper and, people, everything's not on, the shelves aren't stocked, and, we need truckers out there.
Yep.
And it just dawned on me, like, say, hey, like, I should do this. What even kind of baffles me even more is that my father drives a dump truck for a living.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. And, now looking back at it, I wish that, he kind of would have pushed me into this career earlier. But, it is what it is. And I'm thankful I eventually got into this career down the road. But, I tell everybody, I do this first and foremost because I love to drive. Mm-hmm. I don't think that I just love to do it. You ask me, hey, Robert, what do you like to do in your free time? Well, I like to watch sports and like to, get on the treadmill and run a little bit, exercise a little bit. And then, I like to just get my vehicle or my motorcycle. I just love to feel the wind, to drive, to get behind something.
Sure.
And, a part of, yes, I am safe. But at the same time, it's just kind of like, to me, this doesn't feel like work. It's just, it's kind of like a passion, just driving.
That's really cool, man. You're drumming up it's kind of a cliched statement, but I feel like it stands true because I live this every day a lot like you are. And that is, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, is what they say, right? And so you don't feel like it's a job because you feel privileged to get to be out there on the open road.
Absolutely. And, I'm so thankful, for Liquid Trucking to allow me to live out, this dream of mine. And I mean, it's so simple. It's but it's fun, but it's also, a responsibility with it too. And, the responsibility is, you're driving this huge truck, 80,000 pounds, 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour. You have a responsibility, for yourself, for the company you represent, and for other drivers. I want to get home, or I want to end my day and do my 10-hour break and whatever. And I'm sure other people, the smaller cars, they want to get home to their family too. So, there's that responsibility as well.
Sure. Well, I can tell that you take it very seriously just in the way that you talk about it. And I want to say first, before I ask this question, thank you for your service to this great nation. 4 years in the Air Force. That's awesome. We really appreciate, you going in and volunteering to serve, because I could never. There was something my dad kind of tried to push me to a little bit. He wasn't super over the top about it. We don't have a huge history of military service in my family, but I was never able to make that jump. And it's something I have a tremendous degree of respect for. So thank you for the service to our great country, first and foremost.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, nice to hear. Thank you.
And I guess following up on that question, Robert, I'll ask you, what did you learn in the Air Force that kind of applies to the career that you have now? Was there anything that you really took with you out of your military service that's helped you as you've ventured into a career in trucking?
I think the one thing that has always stood out was just in the Air Force, at the time, just kind of like, they called it customs and courtesies, and it was just always, the yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir kind of concept. Being respectful and polite. That's just, and I use that. A lot of truckers out there are very impatient. I see it with different companies. Whether that's at the truck stops or at the at the customers or getting fuel or whatever. We're and I say that to say it's just kind of like, when I go to get delivered or to get loaded or, to pick up, I'm a representation of Liquid Trucking, just like I was a representation of the United States Armed Forces for America, and I need to present myself in a good, respectful way, in an image that doesn't, do any harm to who I'm representing. And I think that's big, because, I could go somewhere and have a bad day and, to get loaded or unloaded. And, the customer, could be like, what's wrong with the company? What's wrong with Liquid Trucking? Are the majority of their guys like this? Do they have bad attitudes? Do we want them handling our freight from now on because of this one bad experience with this driver? And I don't want to ever put myself in that position and have somebody maybe judge my character and Liquid as well. So, I just, like I said, the customs and courtesies and being professional. Because at the end of the day, this is a professional career. We're truckers are hauling, America and its goods, and services all across this great nation. And we need to, in my opinion, just always keep that in mind. So yeah.
It's interesting to hear you highlight that aspect of what you learned in the military, because I think that a little kindness and a little courtesy in every workplace in all the way across the country from coast to coast goes a long way. My mom always used to say, kill them with kindness. And that, as a younger kid, that was hard for me to do. You want to match anger with anger or aggression with aggression. And as I've aged, I start to realize, man, you can talk somebody out of a real rage fest by just being nice to them and by just listening to them and feeling out what's going on in their day. And I think another thing that's always important to remember is that everybody out here is fighting a battle that we know nothing about. And it doesn't matter who you come across in the day. You don't know what their day's been like, what their life has been like. So the fact that you carry that in your back pocket all the time, Robert, I think is very commendable, because regardless of what goes on in your day, people are always going to get the best of you on the other end of the conversation. And I can feel that right here in this podcast. It's very evident that you live by this code.
Yeah. And there's just so much stuff that goes on in people's lives that I don't know. I mean, 99% of the people I interact with every day, I don't know what's going on in their lives. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, death, financial issues, coworker issues, boss issues, or whatever, things that cause them stress. And I'll tell you, I don't like to be stressed. The only time I'm stressed is either if I'm in Houston, Atlanta, or Chicago. and I want to be, on my P's and Q's in those three cities, even though it stresses me out, because if I'm not, things could get, pretty dangerous pretty fast. But nice. It's just, it takes a lot of energy out of your own self when you go out to not be a jerk to somebody. It takes a lot of energy to be a jerk to somebody. Let me say that again. And so, as I've gotten older, I don't like that type of energy, because it just drains you. Yep. In my circumstances, if I'm getting some type of energy or situation that makes me upset, or, a jerk, it's going to cause the remaining 11-hour drive time or 14-hour, day shift on my clock. It's going to ruin the whole day, and I can't have that. Yep. It's not worth to continue the road rage, if that was the case, to make a customer or anybody unhappy. Because, my focus needs to be 10 and 2, what's in front of me, and my side view mirrors. And, I don't really have a time for that.
Well, that's a great mindset to have, Robert, and I think that people would clone it if they could, because it is. We've both talked about it. It's hard to make that adjustment in your life, because everybody wants to stand their ground. Everybody wants to, it's a lot like the drive defensively idea. You want to be. You want to take care of number one, look out for number one, and be defensive and protect yourself. And I think a lot of times those emotions get met with anger, they get met with aggression, they get met with vitriol, and it's just such a much nicer place for us if we all just smile and just try to have the best possible day that we can, even if we're in Atlanta and we know that that's not possible.
Oh my gosh, you're so right, man. I'm 285 down there. I just woosah, deep breath, and just we'll get to wherever we need to go eventually. So
Good on you, man. Safe. Good on you. Get there safe all the time. Well, Robert, it's been a pleasure having you on here. First time on the podcast. I feel like you're seasoned at it already, man. It feels like we've had you on here 10 times already. It's been a great conversation. I do want to open the floor up to you real quick. If there's anything else that you want to say to anybody that might be listening, friends or family, coworkers, anybody from the office, take a minute here and say what you have to say if there's anything else.
I'll just start from the beginning. Nick, who was the HR, just thank you. Mm-hmm. Bo, kind of did my onboarding and my orientation. Thank you. My dispatcher, James, thank you. And safety, Dave, thank you as well for, helping me. So, that's kind of like the 4 people, and my trainer, Rick, thank you so much, man. And, and all the trainers, thank you so much for helping me. Continue to help me too. So that's all, and a great environment. I'm lucky to be a part of Liquid Trucking's story. That's all I can say.
Well, it sounds like they're lucky to have you be a part of their story as well, and they're lucky to be a part of your story, Robert. Thank you so much for the time. Drive safe out there. Keep the shiny side up. We will definitely be back in touch with you, get you back on the podcast again, all right?
Oh, and I want to say I just forgot another trainer. I'm sorry I didn't think of his name, but Jerry as well. Thank you so much.
Hey, man.
I don't want to leave you out.
Yeah, we got to get them all in, man. That's important.
Yeah.
So, all right, Robert, you take care of yourself. We'll be in touch, okay?
All right, you do as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're cruising through telling our driver backstories and talking about people's history here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast today, and it's been a fantastic episode so far. Let me warn you that it's about to get even better as I am joined by my guy. You hear him on this podcast all the time, Jason Eisenman, VP of HR for Liquid Trucking. And Jason, always good to have you here, my friend. Like I say, you're my de facto co-host at this point.
Good to be back, especially with today's guest.
Yes, and today's guest we hold in very high esteem. We've got Liquid driver Rob Schroeder with us. And Rob, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, I understand, Rob, that you've been around for quite some time when it comes to liquid trucking. Jason was telling me that you drove one of the first 3 trucks. Is that true?
That is absolutely true.
And you're still out there cruising right now, aren't you?
I'm making my best attempt.
That's crazy. So you've been with Liquid since the very beginning for a very long time. You've had a ton of experience. Why don't you tell us kind of how things started out with you and Liquid Trucking way back in the day?
Well, I actually drove the first truck that I drove for Liquid Trucking before Roger bought the truck when I was working for Dick Seidlitz. And I put quite a few miles on that truck before he...
Wow, so you were driving liquid trucks before they were even liquid trucks.
Yeah, they didn't have liquid yet when I was driving.
To clear that up a little, there was I don't know if we talked about this story with Roger, but in one of the history episodes, but Roger bought 3 trucks from a gentleman that he knew through the junkyard, right, Rob?
Yes.
And so yep, and that's that gentleman's name. So when Roger bought those 3 trucks, you kind of came along with that.
Yeah, I think there was actually 4 of them, but he bought another one right after that. So I think that made it 5 when we first started. So.
And what were things like when you first started out, Rob? I mean, I imagine it looks a little different today than it did when it was just 4 or 5 trucks.
Right. It was pretty small operation, but it grew fast.
And when you first started out, where'd they have you running? What were you hauling, and where were you headed? Were you going all over the country, or were you just kind of regional? Like, what was the kind of steps to leading to where we are today from where you started out?
Well, the truck that I drove was leased to Hill Brothers, and I actually worked for Hill Brothers for, I don't know, my first 6 years or 7 years, something like that. It was box trailers and reefers is all they had. So.
And what do you like? Do you like, obviously you've been hauling liquid for a long time now, or do you prefer hauling liquid over hauling, box trailers, dry vans, reefer, all that good stuff?
Yes. There's no grocery warehouses to deal with, and unions that like to drag their feet unloading you and stuff like that. So it's a lot nicer.
Yeah, I talk to so many drivers on this podcast that tell me that Liquid has just such a great base of customers, and they're always, it's always a different challenge with each customer, whether the load be hazmat or you've got some kind of, precious product in the back. But it sounds like you guys get in and out most places, and that's because Liquid's maintained such good relationships with their customers over all these years. And I'm sure somebody that's been around for as long as you have with the company, you're a big part of that. Rob, can you speak to that at all about, keeping customer relations up and making sure that everybody treats everybody right?
Well, I've always been under the idea that if I don't have something good to say, I just keep my mouth closed. Sometimes it's hard, but that's the best policy.
Oh, I have a lot of people that would tell you I could take a page out of that book and do myself a favor, Rob, but I just keep talking, and that's why we're here today. So, Jason, you set this interview up for me, got in touch with Rob, and I know that this interview holds kind of a place in your heart, just like it does mine. I'll kind of turn the table over to you. Is there anything that you'd like to ask Rob to kind of, parse out this history a little bit, hear a little bit more about the backstory?
Oh, Rob's probably got so many stories, more stories than anybody probably even listening. If you think about how long just to be in trucking in general, let alone just to be at one company or, so like he just talked about, Roger buying some trucks and he came along and then Roger leasing some trucks on to Hill Brothers. And those are all kind of like, just building blocks, steps along the way that Roger put together to get the company going, and people like Rob that stuck around and dealt with all the changes, not only just at a company that's growing, but like an industry that's ever changing and evolving through, regulations and who you're on the road with every day. So, Rob, if I had to ask anything, like, was there ever a moment in time where you thought, like, I'm going to get out of trucking or just get out of this? Or has it always been, was there ever like that, I'm on the edge and this might be just my too much for me?
Well, in the past, it's been not too hard to stay with, but the longer we go, the more regulations that we have to follow. It makes it tougher for me. I'm not really good with change. Doing things the old way isn't always the right way, but that's the way we did things. It's I guess new must be better because they keep making new policies that you have to follow. It makes it tough.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about some of this in the office. Some of those policies have led to, like, where you don't have to drive as much. You were telling me about some of those outlaw trucking days versus now. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the toughest part is your sleep regulations when you can drive for 10 hours and then or 11 hours and then you have to sleep for 10 hours. And sometimes you're not tired when you have to sleep and you can't sleep. And then when you sleep, you're not getting enough sleep because you can't go to sleep right away. And then you feel like after your 10 hours of sleep, you have to get up and take off, whether you're tired or not, whether you slept any of the 10 hours or not. So I was always used to my own schedule, and it was easier for me, I think, in the old days, but my body doesn't require as much sleep as a lot of people's, I guess. And that's what makes it difficult.
Sure. Now, would you say that the electronic log devices is the kind of the biggest change that you've weathered over the years, Rob?
Oh yes, definitely. I get more sleep than I need to, but I guess if the government says you got to sleep, you got to sleep. So.
Yeah. How was that adjustment coming in from, moving over from paper logs to the electronic logs? How long did that take you to adjust? I'm sure those first few months were probably a nightmare if it really changed your schedule that much.
Oh no, I'm still adjusting. I'm not used to it.
You think you'll ever get used to it?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm too old.
Well, you're not too old to be out there driving around, though. That's the crazy part. Is you're still just out there kicking out miles like the rest of them. You're rolling along and still, it seems like, at least enjoying the job. So I'm glad to hear that. And Jason, I'm sorry I kind of walked on you there.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna, although most people, I don't know, if you drive for us today and Rob, or if you haven't, but Rob's a pretty fun personality too. He's always good with a joke. He's known around the office to have some good, like, local connections. He's always bringing in meat and different things, and so he's just like not only a person or a driver, but kind of a personality. And, you know, when he comes walking through the office, we're like, oh, there's Rob. I, you know, wonder what he's been up to the last month, because he stays out on the road quite a bit. At least I think that. Like, you'll have to tell me, Rob, how often do you go out and come back? Is it shorter now than it used to be?
Well, it goes in spurts. You never know when you're going to be home, but I don't mind staying out for 3 or 4 weeks if the pay is a little fair that way. But whatever comes up, whatever dispatch hands me, that's what I do. I don't complain about it.
Oh, that sounds like an A-plus employee right there, Jason. I don't know about you, but I'm sure the dispatchers love dispatching Rob. If he's never complaining about anything, that's probably a great day when you get to work with Rob. Rob, you've driven all over this country, and I have to ask this. I ask a lot of drivers this question. Out of all the places you've been, out of all the places you've seen and dealt with, what's your favorite place to be in the country when you're working?
It'd have to be on the west part of the United States. It doesn't really matter whether it's northwest or southwest. It's a little more friendly, I think. Driver friendly, and the people are a little more friendly, I think.
Did you expect he was going to say that, Jason? He was going to call out my the region that I live in as one of his favorites?
I know that most drivers in general do not enjoy going to the East Coast. You know, south, I hear most commonly south or west, you know, because it's warmer, the weather's nicer. I hear all kinds of reasons. Now, if I'm personally, when I was driving, I only had to go into the Ontario, Fontana, and the Port of Long Beach were 3 regular stops. And I personally would never go back there if I didn't have to. So, you know, everyone's got their pick, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting, Rob, because we talked about, you know, all the regulation. It doesn't sound like you mind driving in California too much. There's a lot of red tape in that state. I hear a lot of drivers complain about when they have to go to California, but it doesn't seem to bother you that much?
Oh, not unless you get caught speeding.
Yeah, I hear they're pretty tight about their speed limits out there.
Yeah, I think if I had a ticket that was $850.
Ooh.
10 over.
Yikes. And is that more expensive coming out of California than, say, if you got a 10-mile-an-hour ticket, you know, in Nebraska or something like that?
In Nebraska, on the interstate, it would have been a $10 fine.
A $10 fine? Are you serious? I had no idea that these were that much different.
Exactly. Yep, it's pretty scary.
So you'll drive in California, but you'll just keep it at 55 is what you're saying, I think.
Well, I know where I can get by with a little bit more than that, but there's certain spots where I definitely do not go over 55.
Yeah. It's got to be so tough changing states like that and driving across state lines all the time. You know, I remember I was driving with my dad. I believe we were up in the state of Washington. I'm from Oregon, Rob, just to establish that. And we in Oregon, if we see 65, we know we can do about 73 comfortably and nobody will say anything to you. 55, you can do about 63 comfortably. You know, you're good that 8 to 10 miles an hour over. And we were up in Washington and got pulled over, and the cop took my dad's ID and saw it was an Oregon ID, and he said, Mr. Bridges, I don't know about where you come from, but in Washington, our speed limits aren't merely a suggestion. And he got nailed for doing, 4 or 5 over the speed limit. And just there's no signs when you cross state lines that tell you that this is how the police are going to be in this area when they're different someplace else. Does that just come with experience over time, Rob? You just kind of figure out where those places are?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I know there's a place in Oklahoma that doesn't like you to do over 45 miles an hour, but that's just one of the places.
Sure.
And I'll interject. I'll throw in there just a little, because I'm sure Rob hears it, and all the rest of the drivers that are listening here, we've been pounding the speed, to not speed, even if it's 1 over, because we're seeing it left and right all across, the country from drivers, and east, west, north, south, doesn't matter. We got guys bringing in speeding tickets left and right, and that hurts the company overall with the scores, and that hurts their driving records. And then, just to give an example, we haven't shared this with the fleet yet, but we had a truck, and I'm sure it made it through the driver hotline, but we had a truck rear-end 5 cars about a week ago, and speeding, and they were just 5 cars sitting there on a freeway. So they can be really life-changing, from fines or injuries, and not to turn this into a safety talk, but it's just one of those things. Like, speed's always a factor, and man, I don't know how we get people, not just the trucks, but Rob will be the first to tell you, but the cars around the trucks. It's like when they're out there driving the trucks, the cars around them are like in the Indy 500.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, Rob, that kind of brings me to a question I had jotted down here. We've asked this to some drivers in the past when we're talking about this, and drivers, four-wheeler drivers, obviously being something you deal with all the time. It's very frustrating. If you could give one piece of advice to every four-wheeler driver about how they handle themselves around a big rig, what would that be?
Just pay attention to turn signals and try and keep a little bit away from the sides if you can. Get on by or get back behind, one or the other, because it's not dangerous to be in the blind spots.
Sure. Now, I remember seeing those old stickers on the back of dry vans that said "Don't hang out in the no zone," and I think that kind of referred to where the blind spots are. And man, it's got to be tough if you got a little Mini Cooper sitting down there. I mean, what do you do? How can you see it if they're just hanging out next to you like that? I got to assume you can't. You just got to be constantly checking those blind spots.
Well, we've got enough mirrors on those trucks that we can see, but if the color of the vehicle is the same color as the pavement, then it's really difficult to see it.
Oh yeah, especially in the rain, I bet. And let's take this opportunity to say, if it's raining, if it's even sprinkling out there, you ought to have your headlights on, because I've seen some pictures in rear view mirrors that truckers have taken when a car is behind them in the wash. You can't see a gray car or a silver car when it's raining and all that water's washing up. They don't have their headlights on.
Right.
Well, always a good opportunity to send a safety message out to the four-wheelers in our lives on this podcast. I'm glad to do it as well. We're kind of running up against the clock here, Jason. Before we let you go, anything else that you'd like to talk to Rob about?
No, I just say thanks. Well, I was new to the company at one time, and Rob's always been a good guy to stop in and have a conversation and learn history from and learn trucking from. And, each one of the drivers teaches us a little bit all the time about their life out there, and Rob's been one of those. I'll close with, we found that title, Rob, that you were talking about, and we brought it over to the office of that first truck that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. So we'll have to get a picture or something someday, and we're planning to put kind of a trophy hallway or an award hallway in the new administrative building, and so that is where we'll show history of the company and things like that. So that'll probably sit in there at one point.
All right.
How cool that you still have your hands on that thing. I mean, that's a piece of history at this point in time. Frame that thing, get it up on the wall for sure.
Yeah, ironically, it's already framed. It was sitting up in the old dispatch office. Probably got put up there by Roger or Josh years ago, and just didn't make the move, to the new admin building. So we went and took it down out of that office and brought it over.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Rob, we really appreciate you jumping on here with us and sharing some time during your day. Before we get you off here, is there any message that you'd like to send to anyone that might be listening? Could be your friends and family, could be other Liquid drivers or staff members. The floor is yours.
Well, everybody drive carefully and have a good day.
Nice and simple.
I like it too, Jason. That was exactly what I was going to say. All right, gentlemen. Well, Jason Eisenman, Rob Schroeder, thank you guys both so much for your time again. Love having you guys on here, and we'll be in touch for sure in the future, all right?
Sounds good. See you, Rob.
Thank you.
Next up here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, making his second appearance here on the show is Liquid driver Damon Maravilla. Damon, I was so worried about screwing up your last name, I just called you David. Wow. Sorry about that, my friend. How are you doing out there today?
I'm doing all right. Yourself, man?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking. Super glad to have you here on the show. Of course, our buddy Mike Stanfield, our mutual buddy Mike Stanfield, was the one that gave us the idea for this episode. He said, hey, I want to hear about drivers' backstories. And I asked him just straight off, I said, hey, who else should I call that you know that has a backstory that would be an interesting one to listen to? And he said, Damon, hands down. That was the only word that came back from him. So that's why I'm on the phone with you today, man. And I appreciate you being willing to come in and tell your story. I'm going to get out of the way here and just let you talk to me about your backstory. How'd you get into driving? What happened to you to bring you to where you are today?
Well, let's see if I can get that accomplished, man. I mean, it's kind of a weird situation, like all kids, man. It started back in 1974, but I'm Hispanic, so I grew up in the farm towns in California. Kind of growing up the hard way. A lot of nothing to do and hard work to go with it. But, growing up in a little town, man, I didn't really have much to do. So I was one of those troublemakers, little bully in school and always getting in trouble. And, I had a hard time getting along in life. But kind of moving forward from there, I like I said, I was a troublemaker. So I did get into some trouble, and I ended up going to prison and, learning my lesson. After I got out of prison, I was determined to change my life to be something different. So moving forward, I got out of prison when I was 24. A little knucklehead doing stupid stuff, and I was determined to change my life, man. I didn't want to live that life. I wanted to be something better, man. I wanted to be able to succeed in life and not be that person that everybody looked at as literally a piece of crap, because back in those days, I mean, that's what it was. You're prison, tattoos, you're a piece of crap.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving forward, I struggled a lot. I listened to everybody that would always say, well, you're a felon, you're not going to get a job, you're not going to amount to anything, you can't get this job because of this reason, or, so, I had a lot of friends that were in trucking at that time, friends from my mom's church. And, they were like, well, you should go into trucking. You should do something with your life and then get into trucking. And I started looking into it, and everybody's like, no, you know what? You're a felon. So nobody will accept you. You can't do that. So, having that fear of failure, I didn't follow through, man. So I went to school, went to college. I studied information technology, cybersecurity,
mm-hmm.
and I also got an associate's in business.
Okay.
So, I got that, and I looked around. I looked at myself. I was like, "What the hell? Excuse my language. What the heck am I going to do with this, man? I mean, why did I get these? There's no reason for it." So, I went into cooking. I got a job with a Chinese restaurant in Springfield, Missouri. They took a chance on me, and I stayed there for 10 years cooking Chinese food.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good
really
run,
weird.
Man. That's a good run in a restaurant. Not a lot of people will last 10 years at one place in the food industry. I've been there, man, and I understand it. So that's a heck of a run.
Right. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, they treated me like family. They didn't judge me. They loved me for who I was, and I'll always be grateful to them for that. Moving forward again, girl came into my life at that time. She was a waitress there, and I was in a relationship with another girl, and she was keeping me down. I had actually got accepted into a culinary arts school in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And
I had a daughter at the time, and she basically told me, "Hey, look, you know what? If you go to this school, we're done. You're never going to see your daughter again." So, being the person that I wasn't going to allow that to happen. So I did not follow through with that dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll move back over to the waitress. We ended up hiring a waitress there, and we started talking, and we ended up getting together, and where I was telling her about my ambitions and my dreams, and she's like, "Well, you need to do this. You need to go ahead and do it." I was like, "No, I have this fear of failure. It's what if this, all the what ifs started coming in, man. What if?"
Right.
So she held my hand, literally, man. She held my hand up to a tech school. Held my hand through the whole process, man. Get me in, get me set up. And, from there, I just continued to move forward, man. I've been doing this for about 10 years now, going 10 and a half years, I believe. Started out with Schneider, had a migraine incident, and they are just so picky about their drivers and their medical, they use a third-party medical company.
Mm-hmm.
And that company was basically saying, "Hey, you can't work unless you do this, and this." And I was like, "Well, I've already been to the doctor. I mean, the doctor says I'm cleared. It's just a migraine. It's okay." Well, I ended up leaving that job, moving on to a different one. And it was after that, it kind of turned rocky. Just had a bunch of problems at home, and just everything started going south. So it's been a push. It's been one of them push-pull strive things since then.
And when did Liquid come into your story?
Liquid's been in my story for about 1.5. Well, since November, December, January, February, March, April. We're going on 1.5 years now.
Okay. And so did they kind of, when you got the job with Liquid, did that kind of turn things around for you? You said things were kind of heading south and getting hard at home. But you got the job with Liquid, you're still here. So talk to me a little bit about that. How did things change for you once you found the job you're currently in?
It hasn't really changed. I'm that type of person with a black cloud over him, and I think I mentioned that before.
Mm-hmm.
I've got this constant black cloud over me, man. It doesn't matter. And you talk to most people in the office, and they're like, "Yeah, Damon, yeah, he's got quite a bit of problems." I've had, since we last talked, man, my mom ended up passing away.
Oh, Damon, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Hey, you know what? She's in a better place, man, and she got to go with surrounded by all her grandchildren. So it was, it was the right time.
Mm-hmm.
She had COPD, so no. But anyways, I'm that one with that black cloud, man. I mean, I literally had a black cloud this whole time that my driving. You name it, I've had it happen, man. And going back to that, the thing started going south thing, man. I turned to alcohol during that time as well, and it got to the point where I allowed all the stress and all the stupid stuff to get to me, and I didn't know how to function correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I never got into a truck drunk. I never drank when I was driving. I always drank when I got home.
Mm-hmm.
But it was when I did drink, it was to the point of no return.
Yeah.
And that black cloud just got dark, man. And sometimes stuff gets too heavy on you, and you don't know where to go, and you just got to figure it out. Moving forward to Liquid, man. I've had some black clouds on me with Liquid, man. But the difference is, they give a crap about you here. They don't treat you as a number.
Mm-hmm.
They treat you as a person. And that's what's actually kept me here, man. It's the fact that I'm willing to push as hard as they want me to, because they're willing to push as hard for me. So it's the turnaround, the turnaround point was 5 years ago for me. But in trucking, the turnaround point was with Liquid.
That's great, man. Well, and I'm glad to hear that you've got turnaround points in both areas, because one of the things about it's okay to take pride in your job. It's okay to be proud of what you do for a living and to sing the praises of the company or the industry, whatever it is. But a lot of times I think we forget when we're doing that there's a whole different set of problems sometimes waiting for said employee at home. And knowing that you have an employer that is willing to work with you and willing to help you solve these problems, or at least help you while you solve these problems, is huge, man. You're not the first person to say it to me about Liquid. We say it on this podcast all the time. I mean, you've heard other drivers talk about the things that Liquid's done for them, and it's really great. Like, I'm very happy just in the small amount of time I've gotten to know you as a person. We've only done one of these before, but we had a great conversation, and we're 12 minutes into a great conversation right now. I feel like you're a good dude. I feel like you deserve to win. And I hate that you have a little black cloud over your head, but I'm really happy to know that you're with Liquid so that they can assist you in brightening the sunshine on your day from time to time.
Right. I mean, it's not even just something. It's just something about Liquid, man. Just something about Liquid that keeps a person going, man. You don't find a company like this, man. And in my downslope, man, I went through quite a few companies. I'm not proud of it, because my work ethic is not one to go to a job and leave quickly.
Mm-hmm.
They're always there for you, man. They're willing to go that extra mile for you, and they take pride in what they do.
Sure.
Granted, they're gonna ream you if you're doing something wrong, but don't do it wrong, man.
Right. Only takes once to figure out that it's a mistake, right?
Exactly, man. Exactly.
I love it, man, because there's certain things that happen to all of us as individuals as we live our lives, and sometimes, you know what? I mean, you talked to me about, you were 24 when you got out of prison. Man, I would punch 24-year-old me square in the nose, probably repeatedly, for the things that I did when I was 24, just thinking that I knew everything. And one cool thing I think that Liquid has shown me over the course of doing this podcast and all the Liquid drivers I've talked to is that, man, your past doesn't necessarily define you. You can let it define you, but it doesn't have to. And your past has not defined you. And Liquid understands that. They know that what they've gotten you is a great driver, a dude that's willing to bend over backwards for them. And it seems like they're willing to do the same thing for you. That's a match made in heaven in my eyes.
Oh, definitely that, man. If I'd married, man, I'd divorce my wife and then just go ahead and marry them, man. I probably wouldn't have as many headaches, but we can definitely try.
Oh, that's great, man. That's great. Well, Damon, as far as your home life is concerned, how's the family and everything? Now that you're doing, you've got Liquid, locked in. You're not a number. You're a person. Are things on the upslope now? Are we seeing the dark cloud kind of split a little bit and a few rays of sunshine peek through?
Oh, there's always rays of sunshine, man. There's always rays of sunshine. The family life, I mean, you got to learn how to balance it, man. I think that was one of my problems back in the days is I couldn't really balance everything going on and truck at the same time, man. It just wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But now, there's more balance. I mean, I still get the calls. I still have to deal with, all the issues at home from driving, but I mean, it's a little different now, man. I'm not so stressed out about it. I'm able to make clearer decisions back, versus back when I was with those other companies, man. I was just too overwhelmed, and the way I look at it, man, is I'm making an ample amount of money with this company that I don't have to really worry about much, and my kids no longer have to worry.
That's phenomenal.
Getting paid hourly versus.
Well, that's great, man. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that. And you've got, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this before, and I hope that they have, but you've got a fantastic attitude, Damon. You're just, I mean, like you said, you just, on the same breath, you told me you're the guy that's got the black cloud that follows him around. You told me, hey, there's always a ray of sunshine. I don't know any better mindset to have if you have bad luck in life than to look for the rays of sunshine, because it might be the only thing pulling you through. It might be your kids or your dog or your spouse or your parents or any of those people in your support system that you can look to for that ray of sunshine. But it sounds to me like you find it where you need to find it, and that keeps you moving forward. And just so happens that you're hooked up with a great company like Liquid who's going to help propel you in that direction.
Right. I appreciate the compliment, man. And, you know, if we were talking 5 years ago, you would say something totally different, man. You know, I had, you know, I had that opening experience, man. You know, you can't allow everything to get at you, man. I mean, I do stress out. I do have times where I just want to crawl and, you know, curl up in a ball and forget about everything, man. But, you know, I can't allow that to happen because I know what the end result is. And, you know, that's something a lot of us truck drivers don't talk about, man, is, you know, that end result. You know, I struggled, man. You know, I struggled with the alcoholism. I struggled with, you know, wanting to just die, man. You know, and it allowed, you know, I allowed trucking to rule my life. And, you know, I had to understand that I can't allow trucking to rule my life, man. That there's more out there, you know. And if anybody out there is listening, man, I mean, and they feel that way, they should pick up the phone and talk to somebody. You know, never be afraid to talk, man, because, you know, I didn't talk. I refused to talk. I refused to express myself, man. And I ended up, you know, trying to kill myself. You know, and it opened my eyes, man. You know, I quit trucking for probably 6 months and went out and did anything but trucking to kind of reassess and get to know myself again, man. Because this driving it's a wicked life, man. And you know, you see this quite a bit nowadays out there on the road. You see a lot of truckers committing suicide, man. And you know, we can't allow that. We've got to be there for each other, man. And that's one of the things about this company, man. They're here. You know, I can pick up the phone, call anybody, man, and say, hey, look, man, you know what? I need to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why? Dude, you know what? I'd rather just not talk about it. I just need to go home, please. You know, now my dispatcher would be up my butt, you know, trying to find out why. So, you know, apparently, you know, he would care. You know, so, you know, this attitude and this demeanor that I have now is all because of that catalyst 5 years ago. Would I go back to it? Nope, never will, man. I've got 5 kids at home, and I've got kids that show up at my house that need somewhere to live, man, that, you know, we make a bid for.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't let trucking rule your life. I mean, that's the best way to say it, man. And if anybody feels that way, I mean, call dispatch, ask them for my number, and we'll sit down. I'll take you out and buy you a steak, and we'll talk about it, man. So, you know.
That's awesome, dude.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to go there, man.
No,
but, you know,
fine.
I just felt that I had to.
It's fine. I'm glad you did, man, because a lot of times, look, we have fun on this podcast. We have fun. We learn about things. You know, I'm constantly talking to drivers, and this is one aspect that you're right. You see it out there, and it's not really talked about that much because people think it's almost taboo to admit that they're going through something. And especially in a job like trucking, trucking takes a hell of a person. I don't care if you're man, woman, or something in between. If you're going to go out and do this job, you got to have some fortitude. You got to have guts. You got to have strength. You have to have a mindset that is independent of a lot of different things that might be going on in your life, because you've got so much to focus on in such an important job. But we should talk about these things. I'm glad that you're willing to do that. You're telling Liquid truckers right now, hey, I went through this. If you need help, you call me and we'll go through it together. I mean, that's irreplaceable, because that might be the only thing that one person needs. And maybe they're listening. I hope they are.
I hope they do, man. And it doesn't matter who they talk to, man, as long as they talk to somebody, brother. It's a scary feeling, man. It's scary to be alone out there, man. It's scary to have all these thoughts and nobody to talk to, or at least think you can't talk to anybody because you don't want to tell your wife, you don't want to tell your best friend, man. I mean, I didn't even tell Mike, man. Mike didn't even really know about all my. He knows he knows about all my crap now, but he's there for me when I need him, man. And that's what somebody needs, is somebody to be there for and not be judgmental and not put you down for how you're feeling.
Yep. It's true. And look, everybody's fighting a battle. Yeah, I talked about this with Mike. Everybody's fighting a battle that we know nothing about. You know nothing about whoever you cross paths with each day. You just don't know what's going on. And so I think that being kind, being friendly, sharing a smile, that's all that we can do sometimes to make people's day a little bit better. And it's free. It doesn't cost anything. Sometimes it's hard to smile when you got stuff in your teeth, but put that behind you for a minute. And there's something else I want to mention here, Damon, since we're kind of on the subject. There is a great hotline out there. If you're having suicidal thoughts, if things are going bad for you and you need somebody to talk to, but maybe you're not ready to let your family in, or maybe you're not ready to let your friends in yet, you want to talk to somebody independent of the situation, there's 3 numbers, 988. That's the suicide prevention or suicide and crisis lifeline. That's all you have to dial, 988. You'll get to talk to somebody that will help you out. And it sounds like, Damon, that what you're saying is that will help you. You've experienced it. You need to talk to somebody. You got to talk to somebody.
Exactly. And, don't be macho about it, man. It's okay to cry.
It is, man. Yeah, and I mean, it's important to sometimes, and it sucks. Nobody likes it. A lot of times it happens to me when I'm out driving, actually, and I'll be on a real long stretch. I'll be thinking, and then that one song will come on, and it'll melt me into a puddle. And you know what? When I was 30, I was worried that somebody was going to see me crying in the truck. What's going to happen? I'm in a full-size pickup. I'm a man, and I'm crying. Now, I'll roll down the windows and share the volume with everybody. I don't care, because I've learned that it helps. Purge the system every now and then, right? Exactly,
man. It's it feels better afterwards, man. I do it quite a bit, man. We talked about my son who had committed suicide, and then my mom, and just my mom dying, and so we have that music that'll have me crying, man. And you know what? It's okay. I don't care if anybody sees me. If it's at a red light and people are looking up at me while I'm crying, you know what? I'll wave at them and smile, keep on crying, and sing the song while I'm at it. You've got to be able to get past those things, and if it's too hard for you, then maybe you need to take a step back and say, hey, I need help.
That's great advice, man. Great advice from somebody who did that, and look at how it worked out for you. I mean, it's just, like I said, man, I know that these things can't be easy to talk about, Damon, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us, because it's important. There are other people out there going through this right now. It's a guarantee, and I only hope that they can hear your segment here on this episode, and they can get themselves some help in the way they see fit, because we only get one crack at this life, man, and nobody wants to see it cut short for any reason that was preventable, especially not if it's a friend, family member, somebody that you care about.
Definitely.
Damon Maravilla, thank you so much for coming on here, my friend. I'm going to let you get back to it. You've joined me. I know you're dealing with your truck right now. You've been backing into bays and getting the thing cleaned out while you're talking with us, which makes this even cooler to me. You're taking time out of your actual work day to come on and have this conversation, which is not an easy one, dude. I can't thank you enough.
No, I appreciate you putting up with me and giving me the time, man. I mean, like I said, if it can help one person, that's really what I'm looking for, is just to be able to help somebody.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great mindset to have, Damon. Again, thank you for being here. I will get you back on this show sometime in the future, and We'll talk about this again if we have to. We'll talk about something different, have a little bit more fun one way or the other. Can't wait to get you back on the podcast, all right?
I can't wait either. I appreciate you, man.
Take care, Damon.
You too.
Man, you know, getting to do what I do for a living sometimes doesn't even feel real. What a phenomenal podcast episode that we just got to do. I feel so privileged to get to work for a company that has so many people working for it that will come out and just pour out all of the love that they have for Liquid Trucking. It's phenomenal to me, the changes that Liquid Trucking has kind of facilitated for a lot of the people, not only that we had on this podcast today, but the podcast in general. I mean, we've talked to a lot of you drivers out there at this point, and we're always looking for more to tell your stories. But it sounds to me, in the aggregate, like Liquid Trucking is the place to be, all right? If you're listening to this and you're a driver right now and you're thinking, if my company leaves me sitting at a shipper for 14 hours one more time, I am going to put the keys on the dash and walk away from my truck. Well, hey, we understand that at Liquid. We wouldn't ever want you to walk away from your truck and leave it abandoned if you work here, but maybe it's time to put in a call. Head over to the website, liquidtrucking.com. See what we have for you. I mean, you never know, okay? What we heard here today were some stories for some guys that decided, hey, I'm going to make a change, and they ended up finding Liquid Trucking. And I think that you'll have to pry Liquid Trucking out of their cold, dead hands because they ain't going anywhere. And that is something that is a bit unique in today's transportation industry. So if you're out there looking, take a page out of Robert's book, take a page out of Mike's book, and give them a call. They might have something there for you, and it might just change your life for the better. I want to say thank you to Mike Stanfield, for the idea. Without him, we don't do this episode, so big ups to Puff on that one. And I also want to say thanks for the time coming on, sharing the story. Mike, it was great. Robert Sanchez, exact same thing, man. First time on the show, felt like a 10-year vet. I mean, that guy could take my job if he wanted it. No questions asked. So huge thanks to Robert. We also want to say a giant thank you to Rob Schroeder. You've been around forever, man. You know what this company is all about, and you told the story. So cool to have him on with Jason Eisenman. Thank you to Jason as well. Jason's like my honorary co-host, man. Love having him on the show. Helps me out coming up with ideas, things for you guys to listen to that's going to be engaging, entertaining, and educational. Could not do this podcast without my guy Jason. And then finally, thanks to Damon Maravilla for coming on. Second time on the podcast, absolutely killed it. This was a roster of heavy hitters. You know, if you're putting together a baseball lineup, I'm thinking who's batting third, who's batting fourth, who's leading off. Doesn't matter with this roster that I had today. Pick one and get them up to bat because they're going to knock it out of the park. Thank you guys. Can't thank you enough. Keep the shiny side up, Liquid. We'll see you around the corner next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.